It was a day I had hoped would never come. After a weekend getaway with my lover, I returned home expecting the usual routine. But what I found shattered my entire world. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something was off. There was no familiar sight of the kids playing outside. No welcoming smile from my wife. When I reached the door and rang the doorbell, my heart sank. My daughter, with red, puffy eyes, opened the door. Her face was pale, and her expression was one I had never seen before. "Mom," she whispered through her sobs, her voice shaky. "I saw the video. All my friends saw it too." Before I could ask her anything, she handed me a small envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Divorce papers. "You're not allowed here anymore, Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy doesn't want you here." The words hit me like a freight train. My mind went blank as the weight of it all crashed down. I couldn't process what was happening, what had just been revealed. I had always tried to hide the truth from her, tried to shield her from the mess I had made of my life. But now, it was out there for everyone to see. My world, the perfect family I thought I had, was crumbling before my eyes. I stood there in shock as my daughter, barely holding herself together, took a few steps back and then collapsed onto the couch. Her tears stained her cheeks, and my heart shattered. How could I have let it come to this? I had always tried to protect her, but now it was clear. There was no protection from the truth. The video was out, and its reach had done more damage than I could ever imagine. "What video?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed to understand. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "You know, the one with you, and him, the one Daddy found, the one that's all over the internet." I felt the blood drain from my face. My body went cold. The secret affair I thought I had kept hidden, my betrayal of my husband, had now been broadcast to the world. "Why would you—" My words faltered as the gravity of the situation hit me. My daughter wiped her eyes, a mix of anger and sorrow in her gaze. "Because all my friends saw it, Mom. They showed me. And I couldn't even look at you after I knew. I didn't know what to think anymore." I had no words to explain myself, no words to comfort her. How could I? There was no excuse for what I'd done. The shame of it all was unbearable, and yet there was no way to take it back. The video that my husband had so skillfully obtained and shared online had destroyed everything. My heart raced as I tried to comprehend everything. The divorce papers were a cold reminder of the life I had just lost. But the pain I saw in my daughter's eyes was the hardest pill to swallow. She had been my world, my reason for everything, and now I was just a shadow of what I used to be in her life. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I choked out, my voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you?" She didn't say a word. She simply held up her phone, showing me the screen. There it was. My affair. My betrayal. The video that had destroyed everything. The sight of me, so foolish and desperate in my own lust with him, played out for everyone to see. My heart dropped, and I felt like I was suffocating. Her friends knew. Her classmates knew. The shame was too much to bear. But what was worse was the realization that my husband had planned this. He'd worked quietly behind the scenes, tracking me, uncovering the secrets I thought I could keep hidden. He had always suspected, but I had thought I was smart enough to keep it all under wraps. But he wasn't fooled. He knew exactly what I had done. You let him, your lover, destroy everything, my daughter finally said, breaking the silence. Her words were heavy, and they cut deeper than anything I could have expected. You never thought about us. You just thought about yourself. I was silent, unable to defend myself, unable to find the words that could repair the mess I'd made. I had been selfish. My affair, my lies, had cost me everything. The silence between us was deafening. I looked at my daughter, the young girl I once held so close, the one who used to run into my arms every day after school. Now she was distant, her eyes filled with disappointment and betrayal. And I couldn't blame her. I had destroyed everything. What do I do now? I whispered, more to myself than to her. Where do I go? But she wasn't interested in comforting me. Instead, her response was cold and matter-of-fact. You go. You leave. Daddy doesn't want you here, and I don't either. I stood frozen, unable to find the strength to argue. The woman who had once been so sure of herself, who had it all together, was now a stranger to her own family. My husband had exposed me for who I really was. I had thought I could get away with it, that I could balance my double life. But now, it was all in the open, and my daughter, my sweet girl, would never look at me the same way again. Before I could respond, I saw her pick up her phone again, her face now tense with determination. Dad's already on his way home. He's going to get everything, the house, the money, and full custody. I'm sorry, Mom, but that's just how it is. My stomach turned. I could already hear the sound of his voice in my mind. Calm, cold, like he had been planning this for far longer than I had realized. He had known about the affair, probably before I even did. Just as I was processing the gravity of my daughter's words, the front door creaked open, and my husband walked in. His eyes scanned the room briefly, landing on the divorce papers, in my hands and my daughter sitting beside me, her face streaked with tears. The air in the room thickened as he moved toward us. Why are you here again? His voice was steady, but there was a coldness to it that sent chills down my spine. Don't come back to this house. I don't want to see you here. Our relationship is over. Completely. I stood there, frozen in place, not sure how to react. He'd been so composed, so resolute, but I couldn't let him walk away just yet. I had to know, had to ask. Why did you do it? I whispered, though the question felt more like a scream in my chest. Why did you leak the video? You knew it would destroy everything. Why did you do that to me? Why did you punish me by making our daughter watch it? My words hung in the air as I searched his face for an answer. The man I had been married to for so many years, the one I thought I could trust, looked back at me with an expression that betrayed no regret, no sorrow. You want to know why? He replied, his voice unnervingly calm. I did it because I had to, because you needed to face the truth, and it wasn't just about you. It was about our daughter, too. She deserves better than what you've given her. And frankly, you deserved the pain. You had been lying to me, and now you'll have to live with the consequences of your actions. But what about her? I said, pointing toward my daughter who was still standing silently by the door, her hands trembling at her sides. Why did you do this to her? Why does she have to suffer for my mistakes? She's just a child. All this pain, it's too much for her. His eyes flicked to our daughter, but there was no empathy in them. Instead, he spoke with a sense of detachment. She's fine. She'll get over it. You think she's the only one hurt in this situation? She'll be okay. She's crying, I snapped, my voice rising in frustration. She's broken. You did this to her too. A cold, calculated smile flickered across his lips. She's just upset because she's the last one to know. But what's done is done. You think I haven't been through my own hell because of you? I don't care about your tears. I care about our daughter's future. And that means you're out of the picture now. I staggered back, my mind reeling with the magnitude of his words. It was clear now he had no intention of ever forgiving me. And the reality of what was happening hit me like a ton of bricks. My husband, the man I thought I knew, had carefully orchestrated everything to hurt me. And now, he was about to take everything from me. But then, something inside me snapped. I couldn't just stand there, broken, at the mercy of his cold indifference. So, that's it? You've decided everything? I asked, my voice low but fierce. What do you expect from me now? He looked at me with disdain, shaking his head. What do I expect? Nothing. You get nothing. You're done here. I won't allow you to poison our daughter's life anymore. I stood there, numb and shattered, trying to comprehend everything my husband had just said. His cold, detached words echoed in my mind like a constant reminder of my failures. But in that moment, one thing became painfully clear to me. He had never truly loved me the way I thought he had. The man I had spent years with, the one I had trusted, had betrayed me with a cruelty I could never have imagined. His eyes remained steely as he stood across from me, almost like a stranger. You know, he continued, his voice now laced with disdain, I watched you every day. I saw the signs. I knew. The late nights, the excuses, the way you stopped caring. And then it happened. You let it all go. You let him in, didn't you? I felt the weight of his accusation like a slap in the face, but I didn't respond. His words, they were true. I had been unfaithful. I had chosen someone else. Someone who had made me feel alive again. Someone who had given me the attention and care I thought I was missing. My affair had been my escape from a life that felt suffocating. But I never imagined it would cost me everything. You think I didn't see you with him? My husband's voice grew more biting. The way you looked at him, the way you smiled at him, I wasn't blind. I knew you weren't happy with me. And I kept quiet, hoping you'd realize it, hoping you'd come back to me. But no, you didn't. Instead, you chose him. And now, look at what it's come to. A broken family. A ruined daughter. Each word felt like another wound in my already torn heart. He was right, of course. I had cheated. I had betrayed the man who had once been everything to me. And I could no longer deny the truth, not even to myself. My affair had taken everything from me. The love I thought I had, the marriage we built, and the trust I had destroyed, it was all gone. My mind drifted to the night I decided to act on my desires, to the moment when I had made the choice to betray him. It hadn't been a rash decision, but one that had been slowly brewing over time. Like a storm, I didn't know how to stop. My relationship with him had grown stale, distant. The passion had faded, replaced by routine and frustration. And then came the escape, the affair. It had been with someone I had worked with, someone who seemed to understand me, someone who didn't demand anything from me except to be seen. The nights spent with him felt like freedom. like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. But that freedom had a cost, a price I had never imagined paying. As my husband continued speaking, all I could do was watch him. His voice had an edge to it now, one that suggested he had prepared for this moment long ago. Did you think I didn't know? Did you think I wouldn't find out? I knew you were sneaking around. I knew you were hiding things from me, he said. But that video, that was the final nail in the coffin. You've ruined your own life, Emma. You did this to yourself. I felt my world spinning. The man I once called my partner, the man I thought would always be by my side, had turned on me in a way I never could have anticipated. And for what? For my choices? For my infidelity? I couldn't even justify it anymore. The silence in the room felt suffocating as I looked at my daughter, who was still standing quietly by the door, her eyes wide with hurt. Her entire world had been shattered by my actions. And yet I couldn't help but wonder if my husband had been waiting for this moment, waiting to tear me down, to make me pay for what I had done. His next words confirmed my fear. You'll never be part of her life again, Emma. Not after what you've done. You don't deserve her? You don't deserve me? His words hit me harder than anything else. It was one thing to lose him, but to lose my daughter as well? That was the final blow. The pain I felt for my own actions, for my own mistakes, was unbearable. And now, the repercussions of my choices were destroying everything I had once held dear. The finality in his voice, the coldness with which he spoke, sent a chill down my spine. It was like the last remnants of hope I had clung to had been ruthlessly ripped away. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a failure, an unworthy wife, a terrible mother. There was no going back now. The damage had been done, and it was irreversible. "Get out, Emma," he said, his voice steady, devoid of emotion. "You're no longer welcome here. You've hurt our daughter beyond repair, and I can't let you destroy her any further." I felt like I was sinking into a deep, dark abyss. The reality of my situation was too much to bear. The life I had built, the life I had taken for granted, was now in ruins. My marriage was over, and the consequences of my betrayal had torn my family apart. But as much as it hurt, I knew I had no one to blame but myself. I had let my desires, my needs, overshadow the love and commitment I once had for my family. I had been selfish, thinking only of my own satisfaction and ignoring the damage I was causing in the process. I turned to my daughter, who was still standing there, clutching the divorce papers in her trembling hands. Her face was a mix of confusion and heartbreak, and it cut me to the core. She was the one who had to suffer the most because of my actions. The trust between us had been shattered beyond repair, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, the same hurt I had caused by making the choice to betray her father. "Mom, why?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a question I didn't have the answer to. "Why did you do it? Why did you let him in? Don't you love us anymore?" Her words stung. Of course I loved her. I love both of them, my daughter and my husband. But love wasn't enough, was it? It wasn't enough to stop me from making the worst mistake of my life. I wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words caught in my throat. How could I make her understand? How could I make her believe that I didn't intend for any of this to happen? I looked at my husband, pleading with my eyes, silently begging him to reconsider. "Please, don't do this. Don't take her away from me. I know I've made mistakes, but I love her. I love you both. Let's fix this together. But my husband didn't flinch. He turned his back on me, his face hard as stone. You lost that right the moment you chose to betray us, Emma. You made your bed, now lie in it. And just like that, my family was gone. The man I had once loved, the man who had stood by me through thick and thin, was now a stranger. Someone who had no tolerance for my mistakes. And my daughter, the one person I would have done anything for, now saw me as the villain, the one who had caused all the pain. I was alone. I turned to leave, the weight of my failure pressing down on me with each step. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my mind, and I knew, deep down, that I had lost everything. My home, my family, my happiness. They were all gone, and they weren't coming back. In the weeks that followed, I tried everything I could think of to fix what I had broken. I couldn't accept the reality that my family was gone. My mind kept replaying the moments I had shared with them, the laughter, the quiet nights at home, the bond that we had formed over the years. Now, all of it seemed like a distant memory, a dream that had slipped through my fingers. And it was my fault. I called, I sent texts, and I even begged. I begged my husband to forgive me, to give me another chance. I even tried to contact our daughter, hoping that, maybe, the distance would have softened her heart. But each time I was met with silence or cold, emotionless replies. Eventually, I managed to track down a few people who had once been close to us, friends of ours, people who used to share meals with us, who once thought of me as family. I thought that if they saw how much I regretted my actions, maybe they would be able to help me get back to my husband and daughter. I reached out to some of my husband's old colleagues and even some of our mutual friends. My desperation grew by the day. I pleaded with them to speak to Liam for me, to tell him how much I had changed, how deeply I regretted the affair. I needed him to understand. I needed him to see that I wasn't the same person I was when I betrayed him. But when I asked around, hoping for some form of support, the answer I got was never what I had hoped for. One of my husband's closest friends, someone who had once shared beers with Liam and talked about family, life, looked at me with pity. "You really think you can fix this?" he asked, shaking his head slowly. "Emma, you crossed a line. There's no going back now. Everyone knows about that video. People talk. He wasn't the only one." Another friend of Liam's, a woman who had been a close confidant of mine, gave me the same cold response. "You should have thought about the consequences, Emma. Liam's moved on. He's living his life now, and so is your daughter. They're both better off without you." I tried to reach out to my daughter again. I even showed up at her school, hoping to find a chance to talk to her, to apologize in person. But when she saw me, her face was full of anger and hurt. She turned away before I could say a word, her friends surrounding her protectively, as if they were guarding her from the pain I had caused. My heart broke in that moment, but the worst part was hearing her voice, cold and unyielding. "You don't belong here, Mom. I don't want to see you." That was the moment I knew for sure. It was over. No one wanted to give me a second chance. Not Liam, not our daughter, not even the people who had once been closest to us. The truth was, the video had shattered everything. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the humiliation, the pain, the loss of trust. People couldn't look at me the same way anymore. I had tarnished everything I had once held dear, and there was no way to erase that damage. I tried, I really did, but it was clear now. The path to redemption was closed. I had pushed everyone away, and there was no way back.